Okay, so this is my third attempt. 3 times lucky, I hope. And I'm not going to turn the phone around because I lose transmission in here when I do it for some reason. So I shall just have to speak into it and not show you the little things that I was going to show you something on the shelf. Look, we're human beings. Human beings. And I'm only human. When someone says they're only human, they should really leave out the only, because the only human is all there is, really. Human is the only life. Everywhere or anywhere. And certainly in a matrix. So, I don't know what I'm talking about. We're going with another fairy tale, and I believe in fairy tales. I used to always half believe them, as I've said. Now I fully believe them. When I was a child, I believed them, but thought, oh, perhaps I won't be that lucky. But, well, of course, you can be that unlucky too, because if you know what the real fairy tales are, you have to realise that in all the fairy tales there's as much negative as positive. That's right. It may have a happy ending, but you will have to encounter the wicked witch and all the obstacles that happen in fairy tales, shall we say. You know. And I have got a little Snow White ornament, which I actually found on the street, strangely enough, and brought it home and cleaned it and put it there a few years ago on the shelf. I can't show it to you. I will another time when I'm more confident with the mobile, only because I lost transmission when I tried to do it in my first attempt, so I'm not going to risk it again. But, you know, in fairy tales, we may not, you know, you might be like encountering the wicked queen, the all-powerful wicked queen, which is symbolic of the Matrix and its God entity and its minions in a way, in that fairy tale, I think. But, you know, if you're little old human, which is like little old Snow White, and she has her little 7 dwarfs that are like her, that understand, you know, they are like suppressed little humans, the little dwarfs. And Snow White is the best of the humans in that fairy tale. But, you know, she is reduced to very little towards the end, when her only hope is connecting with the prince that can give her the kiss of life and all this sort of stuff that is in the fairy tales. I was about to say rubbish, because even I realise I'm sounding ridiculous. But essentially, without the prince coming at the end and bringing her back to life, because don't forget, the Matrix had succeeded in not getting rid of her completely, but basically suppressing her to where she no longer existed. But she was not past, because otherwise she wouldn't have been able to be brought back. But she couldn't bring herself back. The little 7 dwarfs couldn't bring her back. It took another real human of reasonable vibration to do that. That's how I fantasize and interpret the Snow White. Okay, and I've wasted your time, I'm sorry, but I just saw the little ornament that's still there. It's only like tiny. I found it on the street a couple of years ago and plonked it on there after I cleaned it up. But also what is on the little shelf here, because as you can see, I'm not very decorative, and I'm reluctant, actually. I shouldn't be showing you this part of the kitchen because it's really the dirtiest part. It's shocking here because I'm going to get sympathy here, but like I say, I'm going to lose sympathy too. And no doubt I did lose a few with the dirty stove and the possessed cat and then the other interceptions and interactions that took place, which has never happened before, because I made comments, as I tried to point out in that video explanation video, because I was trying to, I thought that some had departed, shall we say, so I thought, it's probably because of interaction between personal and the and these videos. I'm losing it here. Sorry, I better keep back on track. Not relevant. We're all human, or well, if you are, you can still be prone to be caught by the matrix, even at the level that I'm talking about. I get caught by the matrix myself, because we realise, those of us that realise we're playing it to the last. And like I say, I actually don't, I might not make these videos after the end of the year, but who knows. I didn't think I'd get through the winter, and I've only got a few weeks to go, even though there is a gar blowing up, and I've said that for the last few years. But then again, the matrix can get you in spring or summer too, so it's easy. It's just that the winter is so cold, you tend to think at a physical level it can defeat you a little bit more, at least in my case anyway, because I feel it. But and I always tend to dread it a bit. But I'm pretty confident that I'll still be here in a few weeks now. My father used to always say, well, it's winter, but if it's winter, that means spring is not too far away. That's what he always used to say. And he was of the Matrix. Isn't that amazing? How people of the Matrix can sometimes say things, because they have their moments where they wonder, like I said in the other one. And also, I don't know. Either way, I don't know why I'm making this video, but probably because I am a bit frantic, and because I don't know what I'm sensing in a way. And I wanted to be clear on this, but I'm probably not going to be. But then again, you can't be too clear in a matrix. Now, I mentioned little Snow White there on the shelf, and I was going to say that I would show you, but I will lose transmission probably if I turn it round, although I will try if I go outside, if I can dare to. But the sink here is terribly, terribly dirty, and that's interesting, because I was going to get a replacement sink would be about 8 years ago, and I asked for it for month after month, and they said, yes, we'll give it to you. And then finally, just before Christmas, when they were about to put it actually in, and I waited, and they came and they were supposed to put it in, they said, no, there's nothing wrong with your sink, you can't have one, just clean it up. So so I'm still left with the sink, and the dirt tends to accumulate on it. But the Matrix doesn't want me to be as presentable as all the Matrix people around, shall we say, particularly neighbours and those that are in your same block, because then if people come, it puts people off if everything's untidy, because we're like that as humans. I'm like that myself. You have to look past it at this time now, if you can, because there isn't going to be any of this. This is all, I'm not against the physical in any way, and I've succumbed to it myself. And actually the Matrix plays humans, particularly myself, because the Matrix itself doesn't put a little Snow White figurine on their little shelf like I did there, even though I'm one of the least artistic or least tidy and least house-proud people around. That's only because the Matrix gets to me. But what I'm saying is that if I go to the house next door or down the back, I will see little figurines on the shelf, because I've actually witnessed this, and I noticed it in the past. But I noticed it and saw the connection, but of course I didn't know I was in a matrix and that it was quite as extreme as what it really is. I didn't see it as a mind takeover at a technological level. But I did wonder how, like how I've said that I used to collect the dolls, okay? I wondered why I saw dolls lined up on the actually outside on the shelf outside, just down in my same block, when I only went down there once in a blue moon, shall we say. And I thought that's strange, because these are not really doll collecting types of people, and they're also but that, and I knew that they knew that I collected dolls, but no one has been inside this kitchen here that is around here to see the little funny figurines that I don't even buy. I usually just pick them up off the street, or as I find them randomly around, because I always think in terms of I've got to clear out, so I don't want to make it a home, even though I've been here for so long. It's not funny. I'm stuck. But so I wondered, that's right, you wonder then when you see things that are inside your place, how other people pick it up, and you just say, gee, well, they're human, you see, and we all have common taste. But it actually isn't like that, because those of the matrix are not the same. They don't like the little cutesy things. They only like to present a facade of liking cutesy things, shall we say. They don't actually see something and say, oh, isn't that quaint, I'll take it home and clean it up and put it on my shelf. They don't do that. Only dopes like me do that. That's a human thing. But the Matrix loves it. The Matrix laps it up. The Matrix needs it. That's why I am still here. Because it's not like I'm here because the Matrix God entity and its minions and its disciples actually really like me a lot. No. In fact, they would prefer for most of us to not be here. But while you serve them unintentionally or indirectly, which is the case, because they cannot present that cutesy human silliness that you and I do themselves. They have to see it and emulate it from a human being, and up until the last game is played, they need to keep that pretense up. Until they can bring in the Matrix fully that they desire. Because then they won't need to do that. I don't know what I'm talking about here. I've lost the plot. I'm sorry. I better go back and show you on the shelf next to the little tiny figurine of Snow White that I picked up off the street. And obviously I picked it up because I have always been very familiar with that fairy tale and used to have many little ones of it when I was a child, little books on it when I was a child. It was one of the few that I actually did have. And next to that, this is a candid random video that I do not know what I'll be saying next. Next to that is, well, I won't say what's next to it, but I'll say what's in the centre of it. And it's actually a bone, a real, genuine animal bone of a cat. Only tiny. this is going to be depressing for me. I might have to sit down and move here, but it's there on the thing. Now, I would never believe in my life that I would ever have a cat bone sitting on my shelf there. And those of you that are offended, please tune off. And if you do tune out, you're probably human. But bear with me, because I'm going to tell you the story of it. Because, yes, I am offended by anything like that. In fact, in the past, it would almost horrify me. But I've had to accept the matrix and face up to a few things over the last couple of years. This actually happened more than 3 years ago when the matrix opened up. This actually happened about 4.5 years ago, when I've mentioned this cat in a previous video, but you'd probably have to go back umpteen videos and you'll never find it. I'm going to have to sit down here just for a second. I'm trying to move the mobile and get it to the table. And there's the Simba dog laying there very, 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 very quietly and innocently today. Yes, we have some very fascinatingly bizarre and sinister, I would say, tales of some animals in my reality over the last few years. And of course, these sinister tales of animals have actually been in my reality for more than the last 3.5 years. They've actually been for about 10 or 15. Quite easily. But I was unaware. I can only think back now and realise how the matrix has been operating and playing me for many a year. But there is the dog laying very, I think I'm allowed to show him, only in the sense that no one's going to know except you and me, I hope. But either way, I'm not going to say anything that gets me into too much strife here. I don't know if I can actually turn it round without losing a problem here. I shouldn't really. I should just continue on. I think I might just continue on and sit down with the cat thing. Oh. You see, this is my usual spot actually, but I'm not sure if I can get down and put it here without a problem. Oh, there we go. I hope the sound is coming out, because sometimes when I'm walking around with that mobile, I'm losing the sound too. That's why I say to even do sound tests. If the matrix is full blast, even with the worst abominable sound, you know, it has to be incredibly loud, especially if it's coming from outside, for the matrix to pick it up inside, or even if it's, you know, because most of these sounds that have taken place over the last 1.5 years, you know, when I went out onto the street, at street level, like actually, like, say, a few feet out my door, like I did yesterday and in the last few videos, that sound has to be really terrible on the street. And yet matrix people take no notice of it. Because if you can hear it to where it drives you bonkers inside your house, you can imagine that on the street, because it's not coming from your house. It's coming from, you know, local houses that are around where there's a reasonable distance. That's interesting. Well, interesting in a negative way. Okay, back to the cat bone. I'll tell you the story of a dear little cat that I brought. I've already done it in a previous video. This happened about 5 years ago. Okay, probably about 5 years now. You know, when I had a relative living with me, and so I saw a cat that had been dumped down on Parramatta Road, which is just off the main street down here. And I come home and told the relative and said, can't leave it down there, it'll get killed. It was dumped there and it was frightened. And I didn't want to bring a cat home naturally because we had the dog, the Simba dog was here, and he did not like cats at that time. And he did not like this cat because that's natural for cats and dogs if they've not been brought up together to not get on and to see them as prey in a way. But either way, that's not the point. The little cat was here for a few months. Oh, I can't do this now. Look, I think I did this in a previous video and I really can't go over the story of it, even though it's a simple story because the cat was only here for 3 months. And then it was killed on the road, not far from here, after, we decided to keep it and had even spent a fair bit of money for that purpose. Of course, now I realise the Matrix just had me completely, that everything that was done was a negative action, even though there were good intentions. I, of course, had that instinct to not keep the cat right from the beginning. I knew that it was almost doomed. I actually said that and tried to get it to find another home. But hey, it's a Matrix, so it probably wouldn't matter what home it finds. It wouldn't matter in a Matrix. If it's going to die, it's going to die here, it'll die somewhere else too, because the Matrix will have its way. I'm getting angry here. Sorry about that. But either way, when it did die and it was found, because they notify you naturally, and they do love all that tragedy. Tragedy is fuel for the Matrix. Those sort of set-up scenarios are like, classic Greek tragedy or something? I don't know where that come from. I don't know nothing about these things, but in recent times I've heard a few little things. They lap up all those great big plays, with all their tragedy and all their negative rubbish that's in them. I don't even know, shouldn't be like this and say this, because I don't know most of it. But I know it's all negative. That's enough for me. I only have to see a little bit. You could show me 2 lines of a poem and I can tell you now that it is negative and of the Matrix. You can show me the song and, and I can tell you there's their demigods, projecting their negative, false personas and their secondary ideas through their music, and they're nothing but preachers, really. They're singing preachers, if you really want to look at it. That's how I see it now. Because, if you listen to something or read something and you believe it and you like it, that's a lethal combination. You believe something and you like it, or you like the preacher, or you like the, it's a lethal combination. They're lethal. For a human. Only for a human. If you're not human, it's okay, I would imagine. But either way, because the idea is to suppress, control, and take over and dominate and infiltrate the mind and change the mind of the human being, more or less. In other words, to get you to think like the demigods. That's the whole purpose of music in the Matrix. And by and large, it's been successful with me over a lifetime, and no doubt successful with most other people, because human beings like music. And in fact, you can listen to worse than music too, which is interesting. But, that's the problem, or the danger is that you don't know that even what you see is a pleasant music that might make you feel a bit content. You really have to be very selective. And But anyway, I've gone off the track. The little cat, the bones. When the cat actually, was killed, and it was down at the vet because someone found it, and the vet's called up and said, we've got the dead body of the cat. What do you want to do? And I convinced the relative more or less to bring it home and bury it. And we buried it in a very shallow grave because there's only a little bit of dirt out the back there. Only a very tiny bit of dirt. And it's very hard rock, and there were great big roots of a tree as well, which the Matrix the Matrix people, local people, since got rid of. And they openly poisoned it and told me after they poisoned my tree out the back too. But I've let the Matrix and its people run amok since I have been here, in a way, only to keep the peace, or to keep it so that they don't then become too aggressive, because they can turn on you very quickly over the smallest thing if you don't go along with their ideas and their matrix. And I've known that long before the Matrix. Long before the Matrix, I was aware that local people must have their own way, but they're the Matrix. They have the mindset of the God entity, where they think that it is their street or their suburb, that type of thing. They don't realise that the God entity controls the whole Earth matrix. But either way, that's just. But that doesn't matter to most people, because most people like myself think, oh, well, you only live in a street or a suburb, so that's of more interest to you. Some of them are wondering now, with the world coming crashing down. Some of them are wondering now, with the world crashing down, as I'm wondering. But probably doesn't surprise you and me as much as what it might be surprising them. On the other hand, they may have the mindset, hey, we're coming into more of what we want. Who knows? I'm not going to go there, because I don't know the mind of every entity that's in this Earth matrix, whatever sort of world it is. But either way, the cat, then we buried it in a shallow grave out the back there, in a small patch of dirt, because that's all there was. And it was fine too. Even when they poisoned the tree and took out all the roots, I actually said and then they put all concrete over, because the neighbours next door complained that the concrete was pulling up their concrete and the tree was pulling up, eventually. But either way, they actually wanted to poison the tree for years. But like the one out the front, it took them a long while to be able to convince the local council to get rid of things. And all that. I've gone off the track here. Sorry. Forget about the trees. But all I'm saying is that I did have trees and they're all gone. I didn't like it. And they knew I didn't like it, but they also knew that I was like most people in this world. You don't like to put up too much opposition to a matrix street or to matrix people. I didn't know they were matrix people at that time, but I knew they were still all in collaboration. I just thought they were just local community people that tended to stick to one another. And they're all friends, and they all cooperate with one another because they think they're a community. That's a favourite word around Leichhardt too, the community. You can buy community biscuits. I bought them, and things like this. And it sounds good too, because actually if you just had all little small communities, that probably doesn't sound like a negative thing. But it can be if it is really controlled by a matrix. Even if communities get their ideas and their directions from, a matrix, other sources, in other words, and they believe it, and then they act on that, and they're combining with that community. It's like I mentioned that neighbourhood watch thing before in the videos. But get back to the bones of the cat, because there was a disturbance outside. It's funny, you know. I always used to say, all my life while I've been here, I used to say, because I just heard those people outside. I used to always say, I don't care what goes on outside my door. People can do whatever they like. They can be setting off fireworks out there. I don't care. Boy, was I wrong. I didn't know that what goes on actually outside your door can actually really disturb you. Because I didn't assume that it would be a 24/7 thing, see, so I probably thought, oh, if they occasionally do something noisy or do something naughty or anything at all, you know, that's their business. And it's, but you know, you don't realise when you say all these things that, yeah, like I say, you know, I'm not sure what point I'm making here, probably none, just rambling and whatever, But either way, the cat bones were, well, it wasn't bones then, the cat was buried in the dirt that was out the back just here, the little patch where the dog goes. And they were there for a while, completely buried, even low, and even when they got rid of the tree and put more concrete there, which was all out of my control because the neighbours wanted it. And like I say, I don't own this place, so if the owners, which are really the department, which runs this affordable rent complex, shall we say, which is like Australia-wide, you know, they're everywhere, you know, for people on low incomes, you know. But at any rate, you know, the bones were left out there in the dirt, or the cat was buried under, and I always thought, I hope I never see the bones ever. That's right, I actually said that to myself, as long as it'll go back to the earth, the cat goes back to the earth, it's dead, but at least, you know, we buried it and it'll be safe there for a long time, shall we say. And I actually protected it even when they got rid of the tree, which was right next to it. I said, oh, you're not going to concrete the whole lot of this, are you? Could you leave that little space? And they said, you know, and they were like, yeah, we're only taking this. So I thought, oh, they won't even touch the cat, and they never did. And so it was there for many more months. In fact, it was there for a year and a half. And then after the relative gone and the dog was left with me, the dog went out there one day and dug up. You know, he's out there scratching, you know, because he goes out there, you know, you have to let him out there to go there and do their usual stuff, whatever. And one day when he was out there, he just dug up the entire dirt patch, and all I had was bones of the cat right in front of me looking at me, because he dug the entire cat. Bones at this time, by this time, because it's a year and a half or 2 years after the cat was buried, dug them completely up. And, you know, I was horrified, but at the same time, you know, I was convinced by other people, well, the dog innocently did it, which is, you know, the case, I guess. We all know that, you know, there is possession going on with the animals, but and so I buried most of the bones back in the ground. I couldn't bury them actually all back in that same spot even, because the ground had actually turned to rock, which was interesting. And so I put some of them out the front where you've seen, and there was a few there, but then he subsequently went and dug the few that I'd buried again back up again. So it became a continual thing where they were just being dug up, the few that were left there. And then, so I didn't know where else to put them. So by this time I'm actually becoming desensitised to animal bones, which is interesting. because I would never have thought that I could have stood that, especially to an animal that I actually knew and had actually had, you know. Even though I only had the cat for 3 months. You know, I tried not to get attached to that cat, strangely enough. I was always more attached to the big boy down here that's in the videos, because I knew there was something telling me all the time that it was going to come to a sticky end, that it was not going to last, that I didn't know there was a matrix at that time, but I just knew that I thought that what was around me was still going to prevent it. You know how you get those bad vibes that you think that what is around you, and what was around me did lure the cat to the road to get killed. And I knew that because it disappeared a few times and there was a warning. There were warnings. Unfortunately, you know, not everyone took notice of the warning. I did, but like I say, I couldn't go against everyone else either. So it was kind of like that. I expressed it, and then I was told, "Oh, you're silly, and you know you're too worried, you're too paranoid. You've got to let the cat go outside." And I was happy with it being an outside-inside cat. I'm making a cat video. I can't believe this. Oh, this is terrible. I'm so sorry. But at any rate, that is why there is a cat bone on the shelf, because eventually they just kept digging up. And so I left a few of them on the fence because I didn't know where else to put them. And I almost got sentimental about it. And then someone pinched or stole a couple, and there was only one left, tiny, like that big. So it didn't look like a cat or anything. It was only like a piece, and that's the piece that's on the shelf. And I don't know why I leave it there. I think it's just to show me the matrix, to be aware of it. And I'm very aware that they have no sentiment at all. And that if you are too sentimental and get emotional, as I did about the cat and about all the animals, you just providing a stage play of tragedy that they lap up. So I'm like, it's a bit like looking at a skeleton, you know, like if you have to, but all this is, in my opinion, this is only my view, all of this sort of stuff is great disrespect for life. Because I know people even that will say that once something is dead, it's no longer life. So you don't really have to, and there is truth to that. But I do think that, no, I don't agree with that though. Not because I'm sentimental and stupid, but because once you have that mindset, it leads to other things. It leads to this matrix world that we have now. No, I don't agree with anything in the matrix. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Oh, I'm getting angry here. I'm sorry. Nothing do I agree with. I see nothing. Absolutely nothing that they do is correct. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. If you can show me one thing, people could show me. I could talk to any number of people, whether they're matrix or not, but probably they would be matrix, or matrix controlled anyway. Because even if you get a human that has, psychopathic almost, but they're still human, but they're so matrix directed in their thinking. You know, they will be quite cold about how they see things. But I'm not talking about being cold or sentiment. There is a validity now, I think, to respect not just the living, but everything connected to it. Any connection to life should be respected. I'm going to take it extreme here. But I think it's so. Because once you have the core idea, as I do, that we're spiritual beings, human beings, who are in a suppressed, controlled, depleted, denigrated, is that the word? Degraded, that's the word probably, body that is deliberately matrix degraded, so therefore you don't respect it, because at a more healthy level, they're just putting it practically, and the matrix throws this all up as well though. That's why I sound like a fool, because I can't put it clearly. That body, while you are here, does actually contribute to you elevating your spirit, if you want to look at it that way. That's why we're all at a low level, because it's not just that we don't know what we are and we think we are just little specks of sand in a billions and billions of specks of sand. This is not so. No. And no real life is this so. That cat, its bones that were dug up by possessed animals, that little cat was not possessed. That little cat was not possessed. Most are. Most people are. Oh, I'm sorry about that. That little cat was not possessed. That little cat could produce more of its own kind, and tried to desperately when it was here. But I did not understand then. I didn't understand then. Nobody did. It knew. The simple little cat knew. Had more intelligence than the average human that is left on this world. It knew that it only had one last desperate chance to produce its own kind. It tried with all its might, but it was up against the matrix, and even me. I contributed. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. I think I might go off the cat. I don't know why I mentioned that. See, if I hadn't looked at that shelf and seen the tiny little fragment of bone that was left there, the only one, because the naughty little dog had to keep digging it up. But what I was trying to make the point without, I'll leave the cat alone now, I think. I could make a whole video just on one little cat. That's right. And I should, but I already did on the cat, but I don't think I expressed it well. Probably because I don't want to go into details. But either way, and I don't want to I have to leave that alone now, that cat thing. We have, all I could say was that, that little cat was a rare specimen of a cat. And that's putting it intellectually, which I don't like doing. That cat was a real little spirit. I know that now. I thought all cats were little spirits. Back then, 5 years ago. I now realise this is not the case. because possession can take place in humans, but it can also take place in animals. But also, I'm not correct 100% in what I'm saying. I really should close this off because I'm actually probably saying something that isn't so, that's not correct. Can possession take place in all humans? I don't know about that really. Can possession only take place in certain types of humans or under certain types of conditions? Does possession need a particular type of body? I would think that possession would be impossible, and this is just me speculating here, and I'm going to go into fairyland or high spirit fairyland if you like. But we all know that anyone, any being, anyone that is in this earth matrix or anywhere else for that matter, we all know this. If you are at a very high spiritual level, and your body is also at a high spiritual level, if you want to look at it that way. Because I think while you're here, you probably have to have all these things operating to be at the level that a human being was originally at and is supposed to be at, I would imagine. But I would imagine that particular type of human being it would be impossible for that type of human being to ever be possessed under any circumstances, I would think. They would be totally immune from it. But most of us are not. And that's just what I would imagine. And I think that most would agree with that, actually, even provided you go along with the idea that human beings are meant to be at a certain level, that they're not, because the matrix is a lot more where it's more about only the physical body mainly, and of course the intellect too, and technology and all these things, and intelligence and all that sort of stuff. But I'm not putting this very well, but as I've said before in previous videos a long time ago, if you're at a high spiritual level, you just know everything anyway. So, forget about intellect and all these fancy words and IQs and all this sort of other rubbish that we talk about, because it just wouldn't matter. Because, it wouldn't matter if you're a matrix 180 or 190 degree IQ, or you had an IQ of 200 in a matrix. You could be a top scientist of the matrix that has an IQ of 200. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't be comparable to the high level spiritual human being. You might think you're better, and in this matrix people would certainly think that you are better and see you as as the most superior type of person. That's just the matrix. That's just the technological illusional matrix with its technological intellectual matrix, disciples and beings. And I've lost track here. Completely lost track. Sorry. And not comfortable. My chair's in the wrong spot because I wasn't going to be sitting down. I'm supposed to be going outside and showing you the wind blowing up today. Instead, I got sidetracked by the little ornaments or the little remnants that are left on the little window shelf there. It is all relevant in the matrix. If I had more time and I was actually talking to someone face to face, look, it's all relevant. It's all part of the matrix. I don't always fully understand every single animal, every single being, every single person. No, I don't. It's too hard. It takes a while to figure it out, which is which and what's happened. I'll just point out what I was going to say before about, I do hope no one that is offended by possession of animals is listening, because it's not meant to offend. It's just simply whether you believe in possession or not. I just do. Okay? Because I see it. I wouldn't have believed 3.5 years ago that someone like me would be talking about possession, or that would remotely think that it was possible while you're actually here. I wouldn't have probably thought. I didn't believe in spirits of any sort, dead, alive, or anything. None of this. But now I see it in a real practical way. I can prove it to myself at a practical, rational matrix level. I might not be able to prove it to every matrix rational person, because they are operating under cognitive dissonance and they need a lot of evidence, and even the evidence they will rationalise and say, oh, well, you're mistaken. Can you prove that 100%? Well, some things I actually, well, like I can't prove some things, because obviously, but like if you, all I can say is that if you have an animal, if you had an animal yourself, supposing you had an animal, right? It was your animal. So you knew it. You knew what it looked like. You knew its antics. You knew its behaviour. But mainly you would just even know just what it looked like. The matrix fools with all your senses. It wants to boggle your senses, boggle your thinking, boggle what you think you know. That's what it did with me. Remember how I have said reluctantly that well, I've already mentioned the dog, but I'll keep off the dog for fear of repercussions, if you know what I mean. Whereas the cat is neutral ground, because, you know, it's not, I don't know its owner, or at least I don't, converse with the owner about it. And it's not my cat, all this sort of stuff. But the thing is that I still know that cat. I've known it, seen it for at least 12, 13 years, even though it's probably about 15 or 16 by now. Yes, it may not look that old to you. Well, that's another point. But that is another point which I could prove. If you matrix people, and I'm not talking to matrix people, that's the funny thing, I'm making these videos to non-matrix people who already know this, understand this. But I make it for the odd one, but most of them I'm sure depart anyway. I think they probably have, some of them. But, you know, but what I'm saying is that all I can say is, well, look, that's right. What if an animal, say, and this is all real too, by the way, but just I'll say for speculation or fairy tale purposes, for the purpose of the video, that way no one gets upset, which no one is going to, but maybe one might, I don't know. But either way, if you had an animal, for instance, or if there was an animal, you know, an animal, if it is living a real natural life, especially in a matrix, you know, where you have environmental and negative features around, because any animal, even if it's a natural animal, even if it was in a natural earth, is subject to the environment, is subjected to whether they can get really good food to eat and clean water, all these sorts of things, and whether they can be looked after, or whether they are living a really rough, hard life, and therefore their health and their appearance will not be as good. That's common sense, isn't it? I'm sure everyone would agree with that. Even the most devout matrix person would probably agree with that, okay? I sound like a fool, don't I? I do. But, so if you had an animal that, for instance, had a big, black, dirty mouth, a very lovable, very very attractive, dirty black mouth from consuming an awful lot of food, and teeth and things like this don't always stand up well to things. Don't forget, cats don't occasionally brush, all this sort of stuff. But anyway, that's not the point. Losing the plot and the point here. And this cat has this big black mouth that it wasn't born with, because it is from gradual. I'm assuming it's from gradual use. I don't actually understand everything, even with animals, but you assume these things. And then, when the cat is much, much older, their mouth seems to have miraculously not be this big black, I said dirty mouth, but actually it was never dirty to me. To me it was like just beautiful big black lips. That's how I used to actually see it, to be honest. And it did look like that, because it was a very attractive cat in its own way. You probably wouldn't realise this. My big boy cat was a very, very, very nice, poor unfortunate street cat, but in the sense that, it had its advantages being a street cat, because at least it being a street cat, it's not confined in with the matrix people all the time, and it can wander around a bit, but it is open then to the elements all the time, and it's not a pampered house cat. As a rather famous one of the Matrix, the demigods, once said, "I don't mind being a house cat." I heard that when I was told to look into this famous scientist 3 years ago. Someone said, "Haven't you heard of this person?" I said, "No, I haven't," because I'm mainly familiar only with entertainment demigods as opposed to the intellects and the scientists. No, I've never been into that. That is not my bag. And okay, so you might say, well, maybe it's a bit now, but that's only because I've been forced to, to find out why the Matrix closed down on me personally. It was not a natural thing for me to read intellectual stuff or to have any interest in any of that. Keep it simple, stupid was certainly how I lived. And actually, if I had been allowed to live that with a bit more freedom of mind as well as body, but I thought I had the body freedom, I thought it was the mind. When I finally decided to try to get on top of the mind a bit, then the Matrix decides, no, we'll close down the physical. We'll close, so it's like that. I'm not making sense here, I know, but in this world today, you might be able to think, but you might not be able to go everywhere at the present time. So that's a physical closing down. That's a body closing down. That's a body restriction, I think. Am I putting that right or not? I don't think I am. I'm not making sense here. Sorry. Trying to be a little bit over my own head, I think. But it's hard to... See, I shouldn't even be doing this. It's not really... But I feel that it's okay for me now, because I do feel that I'm overstepping myself. But at the same time, if I don't, then the demigods, they have the Matrix, they have all the humans in the palm of their hand. And either way, if I thought there was, millions and millions and millions of humans, I'd say leave it up to the others. But it's not really like that. Now that I realise that we're in an end game, end time kind of scenario, and there's limits in the numbers and in the whole thing. And also I'm so suppressed and whatever, that what have I got to lose? So it's kind of like that's why I am now saying everything and anything that comes to mind and really pretending to in some ways than what I actually do, but then again I may know more or may But it's mainly like trying to connect just with that simple reality that we are in this diabolical matrix game. That's putting it fancy too, but it just essentially means that there are forces, beings, if you like, that can possess one way or another. And they can possess all life if you are not at a high level, and none of us are. Very few actually probably ever have been, I would imagine. May have been one, I don't know, but certainly not very many. Many pretend to be, and of course many do know a lot. Many are at higher levels than myself, for instance, much higher. But it also depends on how they see or use that, their I don't know, their kind of perspective on. You could know an awful lot, but you could still be on a different path. Now, it's only a matter of opinion which is the correct path, and I have to say that. You choose a path, and like my mother used to always say, you make your bed and you lie on it. And that is true of matrix people, that is true of me, that's true of you. Sometimes you make your bed and you don't actually know you made your bed, but you're still lying on it. I don't know if that made any sense. I'm just trying to be fancy. Because that's certainly what I've done over most of my life. She used to always say that, and she was not an intellectual or a thinking person at all. In fact, I would actually say that she was probably one of the most non-thinking people that I've ever known. I have to say that honestly. Either that or she was probably incredibly possessed, I would imagine. I don't know. I really don't know. It's been a mystery to me over a lifetime to fathom out even my relatives. And even now, I still haven't figured it out. Like some days I'm like, oh, I know for sure what they were and what the situation was. And then other days I say, maybe they were really doing this or that. Maybe I had it wrong. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe this, maybe that. But that's the Matrix playing me, of course, too, because the Matrix loves to set up the doubt, loves to set up the confusion, and it still does. And it will play you then, play you big time. Because it's only when you know the truth for sure, or what you know to be the reality for sure. If I know for sure that an animal is possessed, for instance, then I have no doubt. Strangely enough, I can still be played, as you can see. When I say played, I mean in the sense that if I am looking at the cat, and I'm still seeing it as a cat, even though I know that it is possessed. That's like in that movie, The Innocents, where the main governess lady in it still saw the children as children. She knew they were possessed by adults, or dark adult spirits, as the movie goes. But she still saw them as children too. And she, of course, in her mind, she's like, I can shove the dark, negative adult spirits out and bring the original, what was his name? Miles, back to life, back into full possession of his body, and he can then function as Miles, the boy. That type of thing. She didn't realise that that was not entirely possible, or that if it was possible, it was a small chance and that the risk was great, as the movie's shown. Because once possession takes full hold, that cat or that Miles or or whoever or whatever you're looking at really is not what you're looking at. But if you could see that the cat is really another entity, you wouldn't be fooled, as I am. But it is still too hard for, also because there's the loss too, because you have to accept that you have lost the original cat. You know it's not the original cat. You see that it's not the original cat, but there's such a close resemblance, your mind plays tricks and you want it to be. I don't want the cat, the original cat, to no longer be, and to realise that it was taken nefariously. You were tricked, you played with the matrix. All these animals, I've contributed to the matrix taking control and taking them indirectly, not consciously, and that makes you then angry and upset. But it's futile because you can't do anything about it. So you really do need a bigger mindset, which I do find hard. In fact, if I wasn't in the state that I'm in, where the matrix is so hard and come down so hard on me and around me, to where I'm actually so busy focusing and dealing with matrix at a daily level, you know, I would be bitter and angry and even vengeful in a way. But it would do no good. Also, you don't realise that all the matrix people that have contributed to this, they do not care. They do not understand even. Or maybe they do. Maybe they agree with it. Because don't forget, if you are anti-life, or you don't value life as much, like I say, you don't really have respect for the value of that spirit life at all. You really don't, as most matrix people don't. They value mainly only their own survival and their own body and their own life, and that's just the reality of it. And I don't want to sound hard here, and it's very hard to explain, but they just don't. And they have no, and they're like, what are you whinging about? Like most of them would say to me, what are you whinging about? Didn't we give you a replacement? Is not the replacement better? Are you not happy with the replacement? Does not the replacement do everything that the original one did? You know, you are fooled and you want to be fooled, and you know that it doesn't matter because it gives you the same. In fact, aren't you better off? Now you've got a possessed cat that you can actually talk to, you can communicate. It even gives you some inside information on the matrix sometimes. Whether it's true or not, you have to decide for yourself, but 50% of the time at least, it's actually true, and it gives you a little bit of insight. What more do you want? What are you complaining about? What are you whinging about all this spiritual mumbo-jumbo thing about for? You know, you shouldn't have any complaints. That's how they look at it, I think. They may even say maybe it's better than the original B-Boy cat, because that's what they want. The imitations want to be classed as better and at least equal or better. But I know different. It's a substitute. It's a substitute for something that's real. And even I will, you know, you can't give me something real, you know. You will settle for something less than real because there won't be anything else. It's better than nothing. But that's because I'm an inferior, suppressed, reduced human being. If I was at perhaps the level that some might be at, and wouldn't be very many, I wouldn't think, to where I can discern and say, look, I would probably be better off with nothing if I saw the real reality of it. And you're saying, well, you do because you've just said it. That's an interesting point. Maybe I convince myself that it's important to still play it as though it's real because it represents something. It still represents a life that was once, or life in its own way. It still has some merit, maybe. You know, to dismiss it or throw it away or try to, you know, I don't know. I can't say on that. Perhaps you might have better ideas. It's a very clever takeover of life in a way, I would say, if I had to be blunt about it. And I don't know. Perhaps I better. I don't want to make another animal video. The bird just tweeted out there when I said that. It said, "No, you better not, because it is a little bit boring for us Matrix ones to be listening to you ramble on." Like this drives Matrix people round the twist, I would imagine, for me to be digging up the past as the dog dug up the bones, rehashing it and not letting go of it and saying, well, I won't let go of it, no. But it does me no good to relive it, because what's gone's gone. But if you expect me to say that the imitation is the same as the original, no, you'll never get me to say that. I will accept the imitation because I'm desperate and hard up, and I'm a suppressed, limited human being with very little left around me. There again, maybe if there was a bit more real life, I wouldn't have to accept the secondary life. But it's still better than nothing, because, you know, because I'm not good enough to just go back into myself, shall we say, and just say, hey, I'm all that there is, so therefore I shouldn't need all these external things. That's probably how it's meant to be, but like I say, that left me when I was a child, and I think it leaves most people. That's the problem. Matrix people feel complete in themselves, but theirs is mainly a superficial kind of completeness, where they're like, I am what I appear to be. I am whatever I project, but they're quite empty inside in a way. That's the whole problem. Like there's a great void of emptiness inside most Matrix people and most psychopathic people, and indeed even myself and real humans that are not quite of the Matrix, or not quite 100% psychopathic, but we're still, still not, because we are in a Matrix and surrounded by all this anti-life. It's very easy to be convinced that you are less. It's very easy, and it's almost comfortable, not comfortable, but it's, I didn't make that point very well, and I shouldn't be making videos for this reason, because the demigods can really make very good videos on life and on philosophy and all this sort of stuff. But I just have to say quite honestly that I don't care. I now think that there is total disrespect. And when I say disrespect, I mean, like, how we had the cat, it died, and you put it in the ground, and then the bones are just left in the ground. But unless someone digs up the bones, it's left there. Now, there is no point in prolonging life in the matrix. That's the conclusion that I've now come to. There should be no medical intervention. There should be no but of course all these things become necessary because we're in a matrix. That's only because we're in a matrix. With a matrix God that is about suppressing and causing problems for the human body, even just for the human body. Forget about the human mind or the psychological aspects and the vibrational and frequency aspects, which are the whole basis of, in a way, of the human being and its body and everything. But, just at a physical body level, the people of the matrix will say it's okay to do all sorts of negative physical human things, I would now say, all in the name of science and in prolonging and benefiting the human body. No, this is all matrix stuff. To interfere with the human body, by the matrix people, matrix science, matrix medicine, is all artificial intervention, negative intervention, all disrespectful of the original spiritual human being. I don't think I put that properly. I think I'll have to see what that weather's like outside, see if that gale is still blowing up. See, that's another point that I was going to make. See, if I go outside and I say the matrix God is blowing and howling up his wind today, matrix God is showing its supremacy by its strong wind, because it feels like that. See, it's all based on a feeling, and I'm sure if you went out there and, people would feel it. Unless you're totally of the matrix, you will feel the wind, and you will feel that nature can sometimes cause havoc, which, we're told it can. And indeed it can. But that's because it's a matrix, But also there is human input, and I'm just don't know what I'm talking about here now. It's just coming to me and the words are probably not making any sense. So perhaps I better just say that, if you are of the matrix, and I say that, people say, well, of course it's windy because this is August, and this is your dreaded August month where it's the coldest, because it's not just cold weather, but the wind blows up a really cold, chilly, I think they call it a southerly wind, and it blows it really strong. I'm not sure what the technical term for that is, I've forgotten. And so, yes, of course you are going to have the strong winds, but it's no matrix God, it's no matrix, it's just nature that every August we have these stronger winds. You see, that's the rationalisation. All I'm saying is that when you realise that you're in a certain type of reality, all that means nothing. You know that there are rational reasons why everything happens. You know that there are physical, real, rational reasons that can explain most things, apart from some things that they choose not to explain, which is kind of odd, because really they can easily offer a rational explanation for everything. The Matrix basically does this so that you never ever realise that there is nothing rational in a matrix, that it is all just a human mind frequency vibrational battle between human beings and the gods of the matrix. Because if you realise that, in other words, you realise that that your thinking is basically, particularly some people's thinking, that's another point too, but I don't fully understand this. Some people have more, I think, I'm only guessing this because I don't really know, because we are all very limited and suppressed, or at least, well, I know I am, so I'm assuming that others are too, but there may be some that are less suppressed, and some people might have stronger abilities in certain areas. This was pointed out to me by a viewer, 2 or 3 years ago, but I lost the comment. It's not there. I don't know. I never even got to read the whole thing. I mentioned this many times before because the Matrix, I lost the internet for about 6 weeks because they changed everything over. And so in that time, I lost the comment and I never got to read it. I only read a bit of it, which was interesting, frustrating when I finally got back to it. But I thought, it doesn't matter. It's just making the point that when I talk about tram lines, which I was in the thing, that he's talking about the lines that send the frequencies and vibrationals from one human to another, because that was the point that he's saying some people have rusty lines, whereas some people have clearer lines. So obviously if you've got clearer lines, you're going to send stronger frequency and vibration. But also I think now, and this only came to me very recently, after thinking about a few human comments. I'm not going to go into details or be personal here, but I'm talking to you sort of thing. But there is the element of some people's thinking, if it's very strong with a lot of emotion, then this is how I see it, because like I say, only human beings are connected to other human beings, but not to the Matrix. The Matrix is its own separate connection system, and it's vast, and it has vast numbers. At least 95% of the world appears to me to be Matrix, but, it could be a lot less than that. I have to throw up numbers, that's just to impress, but I don't know what the exact statistics or numbers really are. I have tried to find out, but I mainly try to find out by asking possessed animals, and they love playing you, so I gave that away a while back, because that they have to tell you some truth, and sometimes they even do, but they'll throw it in with so much other rubbish to where you get confused, because don't forget, you have to come up with a certain amount of the idea yourself. You have to sort of ask. You have to ask that question, shall we say. Until you ask that question, you're not going to get the answer. Even if I'm asking the dog something, I have to think of the question. And I have to be pretty close to what's accurate. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. So then it's trial and error, Like I might think to myself, I'm in Sydney. There's supposed to be 5 million people in Sydney. I think it's 5.5 million in Sydney, where I live. Not sure how many are in Leichhardt, but I think a lot of them, but sometimes I think they're recycling them all round from Sydney, to come in here, because they all look different all the time, but there must be astronomical numbers. Look at the number of cars you see going Parramatta Road. You really are looking at literally, if you actually saw that traffic going on a 24-hour cycle, it would have to be, if they're all different cars coming every 24-hour cycle, you'd have to be looking at millions, wouldn't you? So how many of those million were the Matrix? And how many, and I'm going to try to get at a practical level and try to show this or even speak about it at some point, but not today because I'm too tired. And of course the Matrix might play me too, because I regret now that I didn't film a few things a bit more in the past, if I had been able to, because to show something in a real level, like in a photograph for instance, or even in a video, for those that are a little bit skeptical, just a little bit even, it does at least make it a little valid. They still might not buy it, because there again, like if you lean towards the Matrix, you do require a lot of physical evidence. I myself are a person that in the past would have required a fair bit of physical evidence to some, especially to the more wacky or the more spiritual or unphysical stuff. I would have required a lot of evidence. I get a lot of evidence for myself personally. I have enough evidence, but whether I can show it to someone else is another thing. That's basically the problem if you were talking to someone who you think is of the Matrix, assuming there again you could just be being played by Matrix actors, if you want to look at it that way. You never know. You really only have your own senses to go on, and they are very much played by the Matrix. So it is a very difficult, it's a real game at every level, Probably the cleverest ones are those that say, I don't care. You know, like you just stick to your own sort of way of thinking and you are indifferent to a lot of what's around you. That is where you really are mastering something. You're mastering yourself and you are mastering the Matrix to some extent. I'm not able to do that. I still get, very affected by people even though I don't know the people. You know, even though I don't know them, they still appear real. And it's not like I intend to have a personal relationship with them, so it shouldn't matter. It's silly, really. It's foolish. You really should be a lot more indifferent to this reality that we're in. I would say. I try to be. But, we have our senses and we're put into this reality with all those senses and they're all hyped up at a negative level while you're here. So it does get to you. It does get on top of you. That is and, you will kick yourself later on. No doubt, if I get to the end of the year, I'll kick myself. And like I've said, I should have took some photos of more of the stuff, just for my, not just for my own satisfaction, but if you want to show something. Matrix people tend to think a photo doesn't lie. Because everything in the Matrix actually kind of does, which is no joke. But how could it not? When you have the greatest pretender, the greatest God entity that is all about just playing any and presenting anything it wants, all with the purpose of playing human beings in this reality, especially now that the reality is changing and is very volatile at this time. I would say that's the right word, volatile. Good word I got there, eh? And I got off the track about that idea that some humans' thought is going to be more stronger than others at this time. And some of you will probably be aware of that. Right at this moment, I'm aware of something at the side of my head trying to break in, Here and a great big car horn just beeped really long when I said that, because that's acknowledging that. That's when you read the Matrix. But you don't have to be clever to read the Matrix. All you have to do, your senses are already hyped up, so all you have to say is, I heard that. What does it mean? It appeared to be an acknowledgement. Because if you say something and then someone goes, beep, yeah, right. That's kind of like that. The same as if you read something and it has two meanings to you. One is the chosen meaning of, like selling you something or telling you something. But at a personal level, it will mean something else. Like if you take it at the synchronistic personal level, then it will mean something just for you, which won't be related to the billboard or the advertisement. That's just because once you assume that everything revolves around a human, as it does, then everything is of relevance to you. It's just a question of whether you notice it. If you walk past a billboard and don't look at it, then you've chosen to ignore that personal message. I actually sometimes do that. This is really strange. Because I hear people talk really loud and I know that they want you to hear particular words, but I assume it's matrix sometimes. It's matrix kind of making you uncomfortable or having a go at you in some way. So you're like, I don't want to hear that. Because you know that you should just laugh it off, turn the other cheek, like I used to before the matrix. I would have been able, strangely enough, to turn the other cheek or to water off a duck's back, the old saying, if people said something to me. But that's because you think it's just one person that you won't see again. But now that you know that this is a matrix all around you and they're there all the time, you actually can't do that. Or you find it hard to do, which is interesting. So actually it's a regressive step for me in a way, because I was actually more capable of dismissing the matrix in a way years ago than what I am now. Now everything I hear, even though I know it's just matrix acting almost, deliberately there for you to annoy you or upset you, it still gets you. Whereas in the past I'd be like, that was a personal comment, but I don't care because that person probably is just one nut job. But if you thought that everyone was a nut job, everyone's a psychopath, or most are, you see, it puts the ball game becomes completely different. It's actually very intimidating then, isn't it? You're not like, that upset me that person said something mean to me or had a go at me in some way or laughed at me. But I won't see that person again, so I don't really care, and I don't even care if it's true because, it doesn't matter. I just forget it. That's how I was. But you can't forget it if it's around you all the time. It's like personal stuff at a totally world level or a total society level, where everyone and everything around you is part of like you could stand it if a few people don't like you. Well, I personally was always sensitive to that. I mentioned that before. I always used to say, I don't care if people don't even love me, but I don't want them to hate me. So you can imagine, in other words, just let them be neutral. Let them even ignore me, even be indifferent. Most people can't stand indifference. Matrix people in particular can't stand indifference. I was actually got to that point in my life where I was fine with it. It took me a lifetime. But also it was a kind of negative thing too, because it was kind of like saying, hey, by that time I realised that, psychopaths are attracted to me. I will automatically be attracted to them. They'll trick me in some way. And so then I will waste a lot of time and do a lot of negative things unintentionally, go along with them when on my own I wouldn't. So it's kind of like that. So you sort of say, hey, I think I'll just go for the neutral thing of where people don't particularly love or hate me, and maybe just be a bit friendly to people if I can, stick more with more just very light friendships or even acquaintances. Is that the word? And I was actually comfortable with that because I was like, hey, because when you get, like I said in that previous video or the ones further back where you sort of say freedom becomes your main point of interest at some point, when you realise you've been suppressed by psychopaths, you go for the freedom option. Like, it's just important to be able to be free because you have dealt with suppression. Now we have that on a world scale. which is absolutely incredible, unbelievable. To realise that personal freedom, just to be able to do what you want and think what you want, and not to have your thinking controlled, because psychopaths tend to control your thinking. They want to suppress all your ideas, everything you like. They'll do all that. They do that. And that's why then you start to feel really terrible. And then you're like, hey, I can't stand this. You want to be able to get on with some of them, but you're like, hey, they won't let me live at all. They won't let me have even the slightest bit of freedom at a mental level. They'll squash everything you say and do to such an extent that you'll feel that you don't exist, and that you only exist if you go along with everything they want. And sometimes you don't even mind that. Like even with psychopaths, you don't always disagree with them. So you're happy to go along with it, whereas they're never happy to go along with you, ever. In fact, they will sometimes go against you even if they agree with you. That's what I've encountered. That's what you find so mind-boggling. That's when you know that they're really out to get you, as the Matrix is. When it will actually go against its own things that benefit itself and even its own ideas, just so that you are unhappy. That's Matrix thinking. That is its disciples and even humans that go along a psychopathic line or allow themselves to be possessed or whatever. I've lost it here. I'm overstepping my own ability to comprehend everything here, so I'm sorry. But you throw in words like possession and stuff, and it sounds important. I'm just trying to understand it. A bit like in that movie where the lady says, I just want to understand. I think I could have written that, or maybe some of you could have too, because the Matrix throws that up, because it knows that humans do want to. The Matrix knows that real humans do really just want to understand things, if it's a problem. Obviously, if I didn't have problems, I wouldn't probably want to understand it. Some people are seekers of knowledge. I'm not one of those. I have to admit that. I'm a simpleton that way. But if my life is being hindered and suppressed, and I feel threatened, then it's in my interest to seek some knowledge that might get me out of it. It's the only reason I am doing the videos, the only reason that I've had to think about all this stuff, because I've been forced to. It's not like I'm like some people. The Matrix hasn't come down on them, but they're actually still seeking. They still want to know what makes the world tick. I never wanted to know what made the world tick. I was too busy dealing with what made myself tick, because I was not handling life and myself too well. So that's the thing. But it's all one big thing. It's all really one big thing. Because the Matrix is so centered around a human being, you really do have to be aware of all these things I now realise. I've given myself a terrible headache. Yes, the fella in I noticed that the fella in this is personal here. I noticed that the fella in I was about to say Bird on a Wire, on World on a Wire. He was always reaching for the aspirin. The main gentleman, the protagonist in that movie, as they say, the protagonist in the movie, that's the main force, the main character in the movie, always reaching for aspirins. I've gone back to taking aspirin since I saw that movie, because actually, the Matrix gives me a headache. And I never used to take aspirins much. In fact, up to a certain point in my life, I would never have touched an aspirin. Not because I have anything against them, but I just didn't need it. You need Matrix chemicals because you're living in a Matrix. Because the Matrix gives you a headache, so then you need to reach for a couple of aspirin. That's the way it is. But either way, I'm wondering if I can pick this phone up and see what that wind is like outside. I don't know if I can. See, I plonked myself down here. I was going to just go outside the door again like I did yesterday. That's my new bag, my new thing. I got that off a viewer when they said, have a look at someone. I have looked at lots of people over the last 2 years, but I've never thought, hey, I should be one that goes and shows any of the physical matrix outside of this room. I was paranoid and, totally suppressed, even though I was being bombarded with astronomical stuff just outside of the door up until quite recently. Amazing. I didn't dare to. Also, I thought that I would look stupid even talking to you by doing it, because I'm like, hey, I'll just go on with my usual spiritual human being scenario. I was about to say baloney, because it's not baloney, but I basically, thought, hey, that's what I do. I just come here, sit at the table and say we're spiritual human beings. And I do try to talk, yes, about the matrix and all the physical things, but I never show it. I never venture it and put it in front of you. I actually thought to myself, that just makes me look really stupid, which it can. It can, that's the danger of it. But also I knew I couldn't do it anyway, because I was too frightened to confront the matrix with a camera right up front anyway. Now I'm like, hey, they're confronting me daily. If something's in your face, it's really not going to matter whether you are in their face. It might matter a bit. Perhaps I thought it did. But that's only because you live under the delusion that they don't know everything that's going on. And they do. So, you playing their game, pretending that you don't know, and only, like on a daily basis, ignoring things when you're really fuming inside, which is what you do tend to do. You walk around, you poker faced, you pretend that nothing bothers you, and you do, and yet you're sort of inside dreading every step and trying to avoid people on the street and all this sort of stuff. And yet you know that it's important to, as they say, keep cool and all this sort of stuff. You've been advised this. You know that it's the only way. You know you can't do anything by too much confrontation. And it only gets you upset, so then the matrix has got you angry and, is having a good laugh sort of thing. So it's like that. So the question is, I've lost track here again. And actually it's starting to get a little dingy there, so perhaps I should fold up instead of going out. I don't know if I should put this video out. I know there's a matrix playing. Can you hear it? It wouldn't come out on the thing. I should have been out there, you see. I missed the matrix playing. See, they're actually something to really go and look at now, because you don't see many planes. Isn't that funny? When you see a lot of something, it's annoying and you think there's too much. And now, because you've only got a few smaller planes, it's almost a novelty. Even for someone like me, the way the planes were deliberately, they're, showing you the matrix. Because if you're in a city and you're surrounded by a lot of traffic and a lot of aeroplanes and you're under a flight path, all this sort of stuff, you're very aware that you're in a city matrix one way or the other, even if we lived in the old natural world that we dream about and think actually is real. You would still say, hey, I'm in a city matrix when you're in the city, if you're under a flight path where planes and jets are going over quite frequently and you're always stuck in peak hour traffic. I don't drive, but I still see the peak hour traffic. You have, a lot of congestion and a lot of rules, a lot of this and that, because you're not exactly living on the land, sort of thing, as they say. City has always been a system, and some people like that because it's, it's more controlled, and that would be okay too if it wasn't really a matrix that is actually anti-life and anti, you and me, shall we say. That's the main problem. You know, if you wanted to look at it that way, even technology, it may not be the most natural thing for a natural person. And even if it's not as natural as what you think, it's still a bit of a negative. You know, it puts you in a different lifestyle, which means that you're more regimented, that sort of thing. You know, like, you know, some people like being in the army, some people don't. That's what it comes down to. I've actually known people that have been in the army, not real closely, I have to admit. And the few that I have known have been very much, I don't know why I'm saying this, but, you know, I always think of being in the army as for very negative people and very much matrix people. But you can actually be a real human being that can still be, you know, that can go into what you think is a secure job and you are perfectly innocent. That's interesting. And so like some human beings, you're part of a negative thing or part of a negative matrix, because obviously any joint thing, any joint system or collaborative effort is a matrix device or a matrix organisation or system. I don't know the words I'm saying. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to find the right words just to describe where I think it's a group or a group of people that come together. It doesn't matter what the numbers are, where, you know, you get too many numbers into a group with certain ideas and they all follow. They follow. It's like following the lead, it may or may not be good. Most of the time, if you're in a matrix, it's not good. Sorry about my squint in the eye, but I felt something flicker there or something. I'm not sure what that was. It's a bit uncomfortable though, to be honest. Not sure where it's coming from. But I might just, time slipping away too, so I might just, not sure whether to fold up or take the thing just to see what's at the door, but I might lose transmission though when I move the phone. It's not just human beings. They say sensitive, you know. Sensitive just really means that you're aware of everything that's around you. A real human being tends to be like that. Some more than others. You know, but you can be conditioned to be sensitive in a negative way by life and by the matrix. That's what happens to most of us. You know, because, you know, like if I'm sensitive or you're sensitive, it's not going to be a benefit to me now. If I was in a natural world where everything was free and easy, it wouldn't matter that I was sensitive. You know, it wouldn't matter if I was self-conscious about people around. But if you're in a matrix where you're surrounded by matrix people that you know are trying to close you in almost and, you know, direct you and control your activities, your life and that sort of thing, you know, because if, you know, like I say, you know, just at a practical level, if you're uncomfortable going outside your doors, as I am, the minute you go out, well, you're uncomfortable inside too, of course. I mean, you're uncomfortable too. Like I'm talking now, but I'm in a double mind because I know I'm talking to someone on the other side of the world, but I'm surrounded by the matrix through the walls. So it's like I'm in a double mind. In fact, it makes me doubly uncomfortable in a way because I'm not having a private conversation with a few people that I choose to talk to. Obviously, if you make a video, you openly are saying you're talking to anyone that chooses to listen. And I was sceptical about that when I started to make the videos, actually. But I thought, oh, look, the world watches anyway, because I realised I was in a matrix by this time. So I'm like, hey, I've got to override my self-consciousness that way. And I thought, hey, I may as well, because it's the truth anyway. No point in pretending that you have something you don't have. No point in pretending someone isn't watching if they are. Some people are fine with that too. That's another thing too, you know. It's a bit like celebrities. They're used to being watched. They like being watched. A lot of Matrix people like to be watched. Hey, I don't mind to be watched now and again, but no one, I don't think anyone in their right mind wants to be watched 24/7. You know, it's a different matter if you choose to be watched. Oh, the dog's peeing on the floor there, so little Simba dog there. He's just peed on the floor. But actually, it's not surprising because I have been here making the video for a while. But he could have went to the door, but he never does now. I think he's become an indoor dog completely. He's become like a human where he expects the toilet inside, doesn't want to go outside. Actually, if he wasn't possessed, I wouldn't even mind that, to be honest. Because you'd say, what other choice does he have? He's got a lot of afflictions now. The Matrix has pulled him down to nothing, or the body anyway. At least that's what it appears to be. I wouldn't 100% know what goes on. Because this Matrix is such an anti-life, anti-this. I think it's possibly even, you know, has an attitude even towards its own. I don't know. I don't fully understand all that. Eventually, maybe I will, I don't know. But, geez, I'm running out of time, so I don't fathom it all out soon. It's, you know. But even that time thing, some people will want to close that time down. That was a point I was going to make. And this was quite a direct personal almost. And I'm not fully sure what I'm talking about. But there could be some element of reality in it. In that, like I say, some people, and when I say that I mean some human people, real people, that's all I can really describe it, you know, will have the ability to as the Matrix God directs human beings and tries to control their negative and positive emotions and feelings and their vibration and their mind and the whole thing, everything really, so that then the reality is as they want it, you know. You know, there are some human beings who will have more ability to affect the reality at a thought level, perhaps even. I don't think I'm one of those, but obviously all human beings have some of these abilities, I would imagine. But some might be really strong in that, I would think. And so what you see happening in the world can then come into being, even though you wouldn't pick the connection between that person or that human and what you see happening, say, in another part of the world. That will depend on a lot too. I always thought, this is not relevant, but I remember when the Matrix first opened up and exposed itself and came down, as I've said umpteen times, on me 3.5 years ago. For the first 5 or 6 months, not relevant time anyway, but I actually, you know, in my own mind thought, this is happening because I must have some effect somehow. Because otherwise, why is it happening? Because I'm not doing anything. Not doing anything, you know. And I thought, maybe it's at a kind of local level. And this could well be true. Because, you know, we do have what they call the domino effect, where, you know, you could have people that just influence a few around even, but then those people influence more and it accumulates, whereas some people could have a more wider range of effect too. And that's what I assumed with myself. I thought, oh, it's, even though I knew that it was a world matrix at some point, and that it's directed by the Matrix God and its minions, even at a big level, I still thought that For those first 6 months, I tended to think everything tended to be a lot more in my own suburb, shall we say, which means a smaller area. I didn't see myself as, country or world affecting in any way. Whereas some people might, have a certain thought or mind that is powerful enough to affect other places that are far away from where they are. Now, this it also depends on what you think. See, there again, it depends on what you think too. Because sometimes, like I know myself, I don't tend to dwell on things, and I try not to get too involved in this world at the moment because I really don't know what's going on, to be honest. I'm not sure if I would be making the right decision in thinking a certain thought or thinking that it should be a certain way. I've already mentioned how be careful what you wish for, because, I mentioned that example with the planes, how because the big jets were going over, and I'm like, what do we have to, I actually said this to someone out loud verbally. I said, what do we have to have these big noisy planes for? Why can't we bring back those smaller planes with the little propellers like they used to have? They can still get people everywhere. You can still get all your goods and all the rest of it. We don't have to have these great big giant monstrosities that are making all this noise and creating all this havoc and going, do we need that? Couldn't we just turn it back a little? Because, I was trying to be reasonable. Instead of saying no technology, let's all stay on the ground, let's go by boat or something. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, yeah, you do want to get somewhere quick sometimes. You don't want to be 6 months getting, if you're going overseas. So I get that. It's not like we can fly there, we can't do things that we, probably should be able to do a lot more things, as I said in my very first videos. I believe that. I believe human beings in the right environment are much more capable of doing so many things, because if animals can do so much more than us, surely we as, the more complete spiritual kind of beings. I'm trying to use the right words here. I'm getting sick of my own intellect. I can't stand talking like this. This is like as I'm talking and someone else is talking, because I don't feel right doing it. Isn't that funny? I know I should be comfortable with it, but see, that's because you're not used to something. I've lived a lifetime just being little old me, and I don't feel like, now because you realise limited number of human beings, you see you've got yourself in a different position, and you think you're kind of uncomfortable with it, because the Matrix has conditioned us, as for a lifetime, that we're I'm little old Patricia Gilligan, and I was actually fine with that. Strangely enough, the Matrix saying, hey, she was starting to become fine with that, so hey, that's no good. We can't have any human being fine with anything, even with being a limited human being, because hey, they don't know that if you are content, but something happens. It's kind of strange, isn't it? Amazing and strange, because you realise that was the realisation I come to a few years ago, because I had to, because I was like, hey, what is the deal with all this? What's going on? How could this be so if something else isn't so? It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know, some of you out there, if they're bringing forces in from all over the Matrix, to bring you down, you have to say, why is this? What is the deal? Like, you're already been a suppressed human being for a lifetime. So now that's not enough. We have to bring in final great big negative people and negative Matrix scenarios and all this stuff. about to say it was rubbish. It's not really rubbish though. It's not rubbish to them, and it's not rubbish to us, because it does, not only affects your life, but you realise that it ends up where you've got a different reality, as we are now getting more of a different reality. And it's not a reality that a real human being would want. Because if you're already living in a matrix all your life, you don't want to be living in a more suppressed, more closed-in matrix. Like I say, you don't want to be, like no one wants to be in the big prison and then pushed into the little prison, the little jail, or the little psychiatric institution, or the little prisons, And that's, the whole world will now become a big psychiatric institution, or a big prison, openly, and with agreement from a lot of people too. We have to protect ourselves, and we have to protect us from what? From the Matrix? The Matrix will protect you from the Matrix. I don't know what I just said there. It made no sense whatsoever, I have to admit. I didn't even think about what I said. So, sorry if some of the things I say don't actually make full sense. I only hope some of it makes some sense. I'll see if I can see. It'll probably go off. So if it goes off, that's good night, whatever. But it's getting close to night now too. I've been here for a while, and it must be getting a bit, because it's a bit, I think it's getting a bit dingy, but I can't quite see because I haven't really got that, I can't see out the thing there much. I can't really see what it's like outside, so I'm going to try and lift this up and open that door if I can, without, probably won't be able to. If it goes off, that's it, and I'm sorry, but maybe I've been long-winded, as people have told me, so basically some of you might actually say, well, we don't like to cut her off, but perhaps it's just as well she cuts herself off there, because now we can go and do something else, or I'll just see. This is just, oh, sit down for too long, you get a bit stuck and a bit stiff. And I feel stuck and stiff. I never used to feel stuck and stiff even a few years ago. That's the Matrix has really sent